Mrs. Stevens had been feeding the strays for 3 years before I moved in next door. Every morning at 7, she'd shuffle out with her aluminum pie plates and scatter kibble along her property edge, cooing softly to the cats that emerged from the overgrown hedge between our yards. The woman was 82, lived on a pension, and had more compassion in her arthritic fingers than the entire Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association combined. Not that either of us lived in Willowbrook Heights. Our modest ranch home sat just beyond their pristine borders, close enough that we could see their manicured lawns and hear their complaints, but outside their jurisdiction. At least, that's what I thought. The first warning letter appeared taped to Mrs. Stevens' mailbox on a Tuesday. Notice of nuisance violation, it proclaimed, in bold letters, citing concerns about feral animal management and property value degradation. Mrs. Stevens brought it to me with shaking hands, her pale eyes wide behind thick glasses. "They can't make me stop, can they, dear?" she asked. "The cats depend on me." I studied the letter, noting the official letterhead and legal-sounding language. "You're not even in their HOA, Mrs. Stevens. They have no authority over your property." But authority was flexible for the Willowbrook Heights Board. When their first letter failed to intimidate Mrs. Stevens, they escalated. Board President Richard Hawthorne began showing up at her door, his golf shirt pressed and his smile predatory. He'd speak about disease and property damage, suggesting an elderly woman couldn't properly care for so many animals. Mrs. Stevens started forgetting to feed the cats some mornings. She'd stand at her kitchen window, watching them wait by the empty dishes, but her hands would shake too badly to open the kibble bag. That's when I stepped in. "I'll handle the feeding," I told her, "just until this blows over." It didn't blow over. If anything, transferring the target from an elderly woman to a 40-year-old environmental consultant made them bolder. Hawthorne left messages on my voicemail about newcomers who don't understand community standards. Another board member, Patricia Vance, began photographing me through her telephoto lens whenever I stepped outside. The final straw came when they called animal control with a false report about aggressive strays threatening children. The officer who responded was apologetic but thorough, explaining that someone had claimed I was running an unlicensed animal shelter. Finding only 3 well-fed cats napping in the afternoon sun, he left with a warning that frivolous calls waste city resources. That evening, I sat on my back deck with my laptop and began researching. If Willowbrook Heights wanted to play hardball about wildlife, I'd show them what wildlife protection really looked like. I started with the native bird species. Ohio law protects over 40 types of birds that frequent suburban environments, and many were already visiting my yard. I ordered specialized feeders for finches, cardinals, and woodpeckers, positioning them strategically along the property line. The seed I chose was specifically formulated to attract the largest variety of native species. Next came the bat houses. Little brown bats and big brown bats are both protected in Ohio, and they consume thousands of mosquitoes nightly. I installed 3 boxes on poles at the back edge of my property, facing southeast for optimal morning sun exposure. The pollinator garden took more planning. I researched native flowers and shrubs that would attract Ohio's protected bee species, then ordered seeds and saplings. Butterfly weed, wild bergamot, purple coneflower, and native milkweed for the monarchs. The garden would sprawl across my backyard's southern border, a riot of colors and textures that would draw protected pollinators like a beacon. But the masterpiece was the pond. I hired contractors to dig a kidney-shaped water feature, complete with a filtration system and native aquatic plants. The pond would attract everything from protected salamanders to migratory waterfowl. I researched the specific requirements for each species, ensuring optimal habitat conditions. As spring progressed, my backyard transformed. The bird feeders drew steady streams of protected species, their songs creating a dawn chorus that carried across the property line. The first bats took up residence in May, their evening flights mesmerizing against the sunset. By June, the pollinator garden was humming with native bees and bright with butterflies. The pond was my triumph. Wood ducks began stopping during migration. A great blue heron, protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, made regular fishing visits. I even spotted salamanders among the cattails. Hawthorne's complaints to the city took on a frantic edge. He demanded action about the excessive wildlife disrupting their community events. But each time city officials investigated, they found only thriving native species in their natural habitat. The breaking point came when the HOA hired a landscaping crew to trim back overgrown vegetation along their property line. Their chainsaws roared to life at 7 in the morning, aimed at the mature oak trees that formed a natural corridor for my wildlife. I was ready. Within an hour, I had documented evidence of active nesting sites in the targeted trees. Ohio law prohibits disturbing nesting sites of protected species during breeding season, with fines up to $10,000 per violation. The landscaper's chainsaws fell silent when the state wildlife officer arrived. The environmental review that followed was thorough. My property, it turned out, had become a crucial wildlife corridor connecting two larger habitat areas. Any construction or landscaping activities within 50 feet required environmental impact studies. 50 feet put half of Willowbrook Heights common areas under regulatory oversight. Mrs. Stevens smiled when I told her the news. She was back to feeding her cats each morning, her hands steady with purpose. The cats still came, but now they shared the space with protected songbirds, native pollinators, and the occasional salamander. "Nature finds a way," she said, watching a monarch butterfly land on her fence post. I couldn't agree more.